am not feeling well today, huh? My back is stiff. My knees, they work like rusty hinges. And my eyesight, as cloudy as a winter day. Not that I'm complaining. No. Believe it or not, you see before you a grateful man. Why, you'd be grateful too if you had been raised from the dead. There's nothing like spending 4 days in a tomb to make you appreciate a sore back. Yes, my name is Lazarus. You've heard of me, no? Well, if you haven't, you've been spending time in a tomb. For my story has taken on the luster of legend. But let me assure you, what happened to me was no fairy tale. I was dead, and now I stand here talking to you. It doesn't get more real than that. Yet, even before my death, I was living in a tomb of dead religion and lifeless works. Oh, at that point in time, God was a ritual to me and not a relationship. Oh, I was a good Jew. There was no doubt about that, huh? I believed in God. I attended synagogue. I paid my tithes on time. Everyone in my hometown of Bethany knew that I took good care of my 2 sisters. Whenever I walked the streets, people would stop and they would stare and point and say, "Oh, there goes Lazarus, a righteous man." I believed that God had blessed me because I led a good life. I had friends, I had status in the community, I had a house and possessions, a good occupation. Oh, now don't misunderstand me. I wasn't wealthy by any stretch of the imagination. But then again, I never missed a meal. I still haven't. But perhaps my greatest source of pride was my hospitality. All right, if you want to get technical about it, it was my sister's hospitality. I just took credit for it. Mary and Martha, they always had a soft spot in their heart for travelers. When everyone would come to our door, Martha would get busy cooking and cleaning, and Mary would sit around and listen and listen and listen to their long-winded stories, and me, I always found an excuse to go outside. But still, I cashed in on my sister's kindnesses, and I received the praise of men in the marketplace. To tell you the truth, only one of the long parade of guests in our house have stood out in my mind. The teacher from the North Country, the craftsman's son. Now let me tell you, he had chutzpah. Why, even his name conveyed power. Yeshua. God saves. Oh, let me tell you, Jesus, he caused quite a stir throughout Israel. He taught with authority. He attracted immense crowds. Why, some even said he was Messiah. I wasn't willing to go that far. Jesus, he became a very dear friend. He was a very good rabbi. But in my mind, carpenters did not become kings. Besides, Jesus never changed water into wine at my house. But my sisters, on the other hand, they did not quite see eye to eye with me on this thing. Martha, she did not talk about it much, but I knew that she thought that Jesus was very special, because whenever he would come by to visit, she would prepare roast lamb for him. Why, she never did that for me, except during Passover, and only then because God commanded it. Mary, on the other hand, she believed in Jesus the moment she saw him. I'll never forget the time that she sat at Jesus' feet, gobbling up his teachings like a beggar at the banquet table. Meanwhile, Martha was in the kitchen, running around like a goose with his head cut off. All of a sudden, Martha got angry. She slammed the lid down on a pot, and she said in a loud voice for everyone to hear, "Jesus, tell my starry-eyed sister to come in here and help me." Well, you could have heard a matzo ball drop, huh? Jesus, he looked at Mary with an expression that said, "Don't worry, everything will be all right." And then he turned to Martha and said these words, "Martha, Martha, dear, sweet Martha, you are so worried and upset about so many things. Only one thing is needed. Mary, she has found that good part, and I will not take it away from her." Well, now you could have heard half a matzo ball drop, huh? Martha stood there with her mouth wide open, and Jesus went right back to teaching his word. Well, you know what I was thinking? Great, Jesus blew it. No roast lamb tonight. But somehow Martha managed to swallow her pride, and she put together a most elaborate meal. She outdid herself. But she was so frazzled. And in the end, I believe that Jesus would have settled for soup. Well, not long after that, I would change my mind about Jesus. Or rather, he would change my mind for me. I fell ill with a mysterious fever. I could not sleep. I could not move. I could not even eat. That's how I knew I was really sick. And my sisters, they tended to me in their own beautiful ways. Martha, she laid cool cloths across my head and gave me drugged wine to ease the pain. While Mary prayed over me and read to me my favorite passages from Torah. They even sent for Jesus in hopes that he would come and heal me. But by the time he arrived, it was too late. I remember at the point of death, I was struggling to focus through a feverish haze, when suddenly I felt myself step out of my earthly tent. Suddenly, I panicked. I realized that nothing I had ever accomplished in my flesh, in my own strength, could save me. My status, my friends, my house and possessions, all would sink into a pit before the righteous judgment seat of God. After that, all I can tell you is what my sisters and Jesus himself have related. They had my body washed, anointed with oils, and laid in a hillside cave near town. It took 3 strong men to move the massive entrance stone into place, sealing the mouth of my tomb. Some lingered around my gravesite, but my sisters, they retired to our house for the official period of mourning. For 7 days, they were not to bathe or wear shoes. Ashes and veils were to cover their heads. They were to eat sparingly, but weep and moan and wail most generously. 4 days after my passing, Jesus finally arrives in Bethany. He had been on the far side of the Jordan River in temporary exile when word came of my illness. And he did not leave immediately. In fact, he stayed for 2 more days after he received news of my sickness. When his disciples questioned him about this, he said, "This sickness will not end in death. No. It is for God's glory, that God's Son might be glorified through it." Well, when Jesus and his disciples were coming into Bethany, one of his followers, they volunteered to move ahead and announce his arrival. And the master granted permission. Now, when Martha heard that Jesus was approaching Bethany, why, she dashed out of the house without so much a walking stick or a water bag, and she searched high and low for Jesus. And when she saw him, why, she marched right up to him and said, "Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died." Oh, how typical of Martha. Huh? She was, how should I put this? She was the loudmouth in our family, all right? There, I said it. When Martha had a word with you, you never needed an interpreter. Well, Martha said that she fully expected an argument with Jesus after she told him off. But the master did not say a word. He simply probed her with those burning eyes of his. A patient sliver of a smile on his face. And then slowly and gently, he took her hands into his. Well, Martha was unusually taken aback. She looked down at the ground and then said in a softer voice than usual, "But even